I gave the following talk at the Better Conference last month in Fort Wayne, Indiana on how to spot and avoid toxic and abusive online behavior, and while my focus is on the atheist community, my community, the points in this talk are largely universal and hopefully can help you to spot and avoid online abuse in any community that you're a part of. My name is Thomas Westbrook, and I was in 2 different abusive relationships. And today, I want to talk about abuse, because I've seen signs of abuse rife throughout the atheist community, and it worries me, because this is my family. These are the people who I go to conferences with, who I have over to my home, who I eat dinner with. These are my friends. These are people that I love. But I see things that are reminiscent of the times that I was in these relationships. Abusive situations don't all look the same. Sometimes you have people who are angry alcoholics. Sometimes you have people with borderline personality disorder. You have people who are narcissists. You have people who have bipolar. The list goes on. And just because you suffer from a personality disorder or a particular condition, it doesn't mean that you have to take out that pain on other people. But I wanted to understand where it's coming from. So I started looking for some of the signs of abuse and trying to figure out, because what I found myself doing with the atheist community is I found myself gray rocking. Gray rocking is where you become uninterested and unresponsive as much as you possibly can. Your objective is to make someone lose interest in you. When you're in a relationship with someone who is, especially with narcissists, if you respond in any way, with any kind of emotion to them, if let's say that they ask you if you're excited about something and you respond, oh yeah, I'm super excited. Then they'll be like, why are you excited about that? You shouldn't be excited about that. Or, no, I'm not really. Why are you excited about that? What's wrong with you? This is a big deal. And there's no right answer. You're constantly walking through a minefield where the mines are in different positions every single day and you don't know when you're about to step on one. It's a terrifying thing. And then if you bring it up to them and you say, you said this and it really made me feel this way, it hurt me. They're like, I didn't say that, and they gaslight you. They make you feel like you're going crazy. So you start gray rocking. They say, you heard about this? Yeah. Try to be uninteresting. You don't feed their needs for drama or attention. You don't show emotion or say anything interesting or disclose any personal information, nor do you ask questions or participate in conversations except for brief, factual replies. The reason I'm having this talk right now is because I found myself gray rocking the atheist community. And that to me was a warning sign that there were elements of abuse within the atheist community towards each other, and there are elements within the atheist community where we project abuse out onto others. And most of us completely look the other way and act like it's not a big deal, or we act self-righteous about it, like there's some reason why it's okay if we do it, because the ends justify the means. Well, let's take a look at what a couple of those signs of abuse are. The first is we constantly criticize others. How often do you go online and see your Twitter feed nothing but positivity and love and sunshine and roses, and people saying, oh my God, that shirt looks so good on you. 90% of the stuff that we see it's for the purpose of generating outrage and anger and calling others names. When we're talking to others outside of our community, we dehumanize them. They're Christians, they don't get it. They're conservatives. There's these tribalistic dividing lines, we other people. We fail to see the person behind the keyboard. There's one situation where, and I'm not going to give names for the sake of privacy, but there's a particular individual who wrestled with social situations and understanding and trying to figure out how to engage in, and it was in a new environment. The times are changing rapidly, and this person was autistic. They said something a little bit off, they didn't understand what they said off, and instantly the internet descended upon them with fangs drawn, ready to attack. What the hell? Even if they didn't have autism, that's a person with feelings. They're not trying to be malicious. We have no concern for how we make others feel. Since when is it okay to attack other people constantly and berate them and destroy them simply because we disagree with them on the internet. We belittle and we shame. We resort to name-calling, religitard, creationist idiots. You can't reason someone out of something that they weren't reasoned into to begin with. What is this, guys? Is this junior high? You worship a God who condones genocide? We put things into people's mouth. We tell them what they believe. No, not every Christian believes that. They might have reasons why they think that it doesn't condone genocide, or, well, they don't think that that's what God actually said, or they never knew that verse or whatever. But all of a sudden, you've lumped every single Christian in as someone who's completely cool with genocide. Do I think that the Bible condones genocide? Yes, I do. And I've said that in plenty of videos, and I call it out. And I point out where the verses are horrible and atrocious. And I tell Christians that if you're going to be reading this book literally and taking it literally, then you've got this problem that you have to contend with. Does that mean that then I should turn to the Christian and say, you're okay with genocide, you're horrible, you're basically Hitler, and you can't really get much worse than that once you've gotten to you're basically Hitler? We start blame lumping. What do I mean by that? All Christians have blood on their hands here. All Christians. Okay, what about the progressive Christians? What about in the case of Roe v. Wade? We say, there are people who are going to die because of this Supreme Court decision. It's true. There are people who are going to die. There are people who are going to perform unsafe abortions. There are people who are going to have unsafe pregnancies, who are not going to get the medical care that they need. And there are people who are going to die. Does that mean that the progressive Christians who are pro-choice, do they have blood on their hands? Is it equal? Do they share the blame equally? Have we gotten rid of all spectrum of difference and any gradient for blame? It's all lumped into one category. Everyone has. What about the Unitarian Universalists? What about the Episcopalians? Are they in the same category? All priests are rapists? Now I'm one of the biggest critics of the Catholic Church and the Baptist Church. I'm constantly posting about scandals, about pedophilia within the church, about cover-ups. I've done video after video after video on the topic. But I don't think that every single priest is a rapist. Everyone who doesn't instantly denounce this person is a violent transphobe. It's black and white thinking, and you're lumping everyone in. The second that everyone becomes a Nazi, the word loses all meaning and power. The second that everyone becomes an Islamophobe, a bigot, a violent extremist, a Nazi, these words have power, they have meaning. They're words that we can use, that we can utilize, that we should use and utilize appropriately. But the second that we dilute it down to the point where these words no longer have any meaning, we've done ourselves a disservice because we've lost a weapon. We've lost a tool. It's lost its potency. All men, all cis people, all white people. I understand the nuances here. I do. I really, really do. I know that when someone says all men, they're not talking about all men. I get that. I know that when people say all cis people or all white people, they're not talking about all white people. But my question is, when you say that, are you trying to reach me who gets the nuance and who's already on your side and who already agrees with you 100% about what you're saying about what the problem is? Or are you trying to reach the person who you're lumping into this category who's now going to come along and be like, well, not all men, not all. I'm one of the good ones. And you're like, my God, like you're dense. No, that person's not going to get it. The other people on the other side are going to be pushed away. They're going to feel like, great, I'm in this category and now I'm demonized and seen as this other person. And maybe they've got problems and there's issues and there's things that need to be addressed and need to be dealt with. And yet they aren't able to hear it because I know that when I was on the other side, I couldn't hear it. I know that when I was on the other side and I heard these phrases and I felt lumped into this category, oh yeah, all Christians, all dumb, whatever, I instantly shut down. The dialogue didn't make any progress. So if the goal is to simply put that person down and show other people and shame them and be like, don't be like that person, okay, but what's the goal? Are you trying to reach that person? Are you trying to reach other people who are also within that category? I think that there's a better way. Isolation and shunning. We do this within our own community. Guilt by association. You had that person on your platform? You support that person? You talk to this person? You're the devil. Now, am I saying that you should necessarily platform terrible people? No. Am I saying that there are lines to be drawn and people that, when they cross those lines, that there's appropriate measures and that actions have consequences? Absolutely, I am. But the second that you start telling everyone else in your community who they can and can't talk to and who they can and can't associate with and who they can and can't platform, that's controlling. And it's borderline abusive potentially. We give people the tribalistic cold shoulder. The second that they call us out or they push back, that they tell us that they don't appreciate this kind of behavior, they're out. And we tell others who they can and can't platform. We also control who other people associate with. We say they can't associate with those people, but they should and have to associate with these people. Kind of makes me want to just start going to church and just hanging out in the pews and talking to them and, what are they going to do? Tell me that I can't go and talk with atheists even though I'm an atheist? We tell others that they have to affiliate with a particular person or group or individual. We tell them what they have to talk about. Why aren't you talking about this on your channel? Why aren't you talking about that? Why aren't you talking about X, Y, Z? I'm not an expert on everything. Guys, I'm just trying to figure this shit out like the rest of us. I'm just bumbling my way through the world, trying to not get hurt and trying to share my experience as much as I can with you guys as I go. I want to save people from making some of the same mistakes or getting hurt the same way. And if my deconstruction is able to help you guys, then that's awesome. But don't tell me to talk about an issue that I have no experience in. I'm gonna bumble it up. And then we're gaslit. How many times are we scrolling through social media and you get in a debate, you get in an argument with someone, and they say, you think this and blah, 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 and all that, and they throw all this stuff at you, and you say, actually, no, and they're like, well, I didn't say that. Like, I've got the receipts. It's right there. You didn't even delete it, but if you did, I've got 12 screenshots backed up to my Google Drive server and my NAS. I can go and bring them to your home and have them shipped to you by FedEx if you want the old way. But we're gaslit. We're constantly made to second guess ourselves, and it's maddening. It makes us go crazy. We give people no space. If someone blocks you, leave it at that. If someone blocks you, that's their way of saying hey, please don't harass me. Don't stalk me. And then instead, we go and we incessantly harass them until we get blocked. We make their life a living hell. And then we create sock accounts to subvert the block so that we can keep harassing them. And the whole time we feel justified in that abuse, because don't get me wrong, that is abusive behavior. It's stalking. But we feel justified in it because that person is a terrible person. Probably a Nazi. And then we have purity tests for our own. We have purity tests that are so intense that we ourselves cannot pass them. So we have to resort to gray rocking. We have to resort to kind of keeping our head down. Because I'm sorry, and I'm not talking about a specific issue. I'm not talking about one thing like you believe this or you believe that. It's just that we're a diverse group of people, guys. What are we united on here? We're united on the fact that none of us believe in God. We believe that church and state should be separate. We think you can be good without God. These are great things. These are great starting points. And I think that most of us are skeptically minded. I think most of us don't believe in paranormal stuff. I think most of us are humanists or sentientists if you're kind of in that. That's a whole nother category. But most of us have these common things, but that doesn't mean that we necessarily share all of each other's positions when it comes to political opinions and ideas and beliefs, when it comes to ideas about economics, when it comes to every social issue. Now, I think that most of us agree that we can rationally figure out systems that are more efficient, that get to goals better, and we can gather data and we can find that out scientifically. I think that most of us believe that morality has something to do with mitigating harm and not hurting others. increasing well-being. And I think that we can use those outlines to try to build a system that is better, but we don't agree on everything. And so your purity test and your purity test and your purity test are all going to be a little bit different. And I'm probably not going to pass any of them, and you're probably not going to pass any of anyone else's. We have an expectation of perfection, and we have a one strike you're out policy with no path to redemption.
Yeah.
How the hell is it that Christians are able to come along and they're able to say, forgive other people 70 times 7, Jesus forgives you, love your neighbor, pray for your enemy, pray for the people who persecute you. I'm not saying that you have to love your enemy, but they take it to this whole nother level, and we've got a one strike you're out policy. Well, guess what? Guess how quickly we're going to be bleeding members. Guess how quickly we're going to be bleeding and hemorrhaging people in this community because everyone strikes out at least once.
Yeah.
And we constantly look for fights. We constantly look for fights. We're not looking for allies who we're shoulder to shoulder in fighting against fundamentalism and extremism. We're constantly looking inward like, oh, that person and that person said that, and that person, oh, I don't want to touch that. And did you hear what that person? Yeah. Cancel them. We're going to war. But what is our goal? What is our goal? Is our goal to be right? Is our goal to feel good because, we really trounced someone? Or is our goal to build bridges? Is our goal to build a community? Is our goal to build something strong and bring people together? I understand that there are bigots out there. I understand that there are hateful people out there. But where is the line? Who draws the line? And how far are we willing to go? And at what point do we say, I've taken this person over here who's learning. I've taken this person over here who does not intend malice, but who has ignorance and doesn't get it. And I've lumped them in on the complete other end of the spectrum, kicked them to the curb, and now they have nowhere else to go but further in that direction. So how do we do better? First, I think we need to understand. We need to understand a basic understanding of how the mind works, of how the brain works, and I've got not nearly enough time to give an introductory college course on neuroscience and psychology. But I will try in 20 minutes as a layperson, because the Dunning-Kruger effect is a bitch. Many of you may have heard of the curious case of Phineas Gage. He had a railroad spike get shoved up through his brain. He survived it. His left frontal lobe was severely damaged. I don't know how much of this story is folklore and how much is 100% true, and because it was a while ago. But what I do know is that your brain, when it is altered, it can alter your personality. And it can also alter your behaviors. We are our brains. There are regions and centers of our brains that interact with each other, and they lead us to feel and behave in certain ways. Where do we get our brains from? 2 places. 1, genetics. We're born with it. Get some from our mom, some from our dad. Boom, there you go. You got your brain. And then over time, that brain is altered through experiences. We've got nurture and nature, and that nurture, the education, it has some limitations. It's limited based off of the genetic material that it's given to work with. But over time, maybe you're abused. Maybe you're constantly traumatized. Maybe you grow up with PTSD. And experiencing that again and again and again and again is causing your brain to be flooded with these chemicals, these releases of chemicals. You're constantly on edge, and you start to develop responses. You start to develop feelings and trauma responses to this. It shapes you throughout your life. And also we can learn and educate ourselves. This guy, by the way, he was the first guy to ever spike his hair. It was way before it was cool. This study here, since I have a lot of time, the lower amygdala volume in men is associated with childhood aggression, early psychopathic traits, and future violence. That must mean a lot, right? But let's dive into it. What does that mean? The amygdala. The amygdala is this little region in your brain. It is associated with feelings of strong emotion and fear, stuff like that. And if you have one that is smaller than most other people, then you're more likely to engage in aggressive behavior. You're more likely to go on to have psychopathic tendencies, and you're more likely to engage in future violence. All because of that little green thing right there. That's not fair. That means that people that are born with a small little one of those green things are more likely to go to prison. That kind of sucks. Stop and think about that. Whoever's brain that is, which it looks very realistic, clearly didn't choose to be born with a smaller than average amygdala. But they were, and it'll affect them for the rest of their life. Now, if you hear that that person went on to commit some violent crime, some act of passion that 99% of the rest of the population wouldn't have done, but they had a little smaller than average green thingy, how do you feel now? It doesn't justify the act. It doesn't justify what they did. But it makes it so it's easier to understand. It makes it easier to humanize, and it makes it easier to feel compassion because it's something that they had no control over. You did not choose whether or not you're a psychopath. What about this one? Right orbitofrontal tumor with pedophilia symptom and constructional apraxia sign. This is a case study where there was a guy back in 2002. No prior history, no prior record of any kind of deviant sexual behavior, was in a happy relationship, happy family life, had his own kids, never cheated on his wife, as far as that we know of. And there was no sign of uncontrollable sexual urges. All of a sudden, one day, that changed like that. He started looking at adult material, well, child material, but you know what I mean. Trying not to get this video demonetized. And he started collecting it. He started having intense sexual urges, started acting on stuff, but at the same time, his moral sensibilities were preserved. So he knew that what he was doing was wrong, but he said, I cannot control the intensity of these urges I'm getting. At the same time, he was suffering from severe headaches. They performed some scans on his brain and found that he had a gigantic tumor pushing into a region of his brain. It was overwhelming his ability to be able to control. They removed the tumor, and the urges went away. Completely went away. Went through a program, paid some fines or went to jail or whatever. His wife finally took him back, started again. Tumor's gone, everything's back to normal. All of a sudden, starts getting headaches again, and boom, the urges are back. Which was the first telltale sign that maybe the tumor had resurfaced, and they scanned his brain and the tumor was back. There are some people who are born as pedophiles. And most people in this room would not have the guts to say, I have tremendous empathy for pedophiles. Besides Jesus in the back. I'm not saying for people who act on it and cause harm to kids. There is a big distinction. I'm saying for people who wake up in the morning and they're like, struggle. The struggle starts. And for some reason, they can't control it, but they have that urge there. I cannot imagine how much that would suck, how horrible that would be, and I feel bad for people who are born into that situation. And I think that when we start understanding a little bit about neuroscience and anatomy and upbringing and abuse and how people develop, we start realizing that we have a little bit less say in the things that we do than we realize. And so do all the other people around us. We're so quick to attribute the great things that we do to our own actions, and we did this, and we worked hard, and we strived, and we made good choices, and we're so quick to just say that that person's a bad person. And when we make mistakes and do things wrong, then we understand and we're able to empathize with ourselves because, yeah, we're in our shoes, we get it, and we wish that other people would do the same for us. You're one brain tumor away. That's a scary thought. So what do? First we learn, then we act. Don't be like Ignaz. Do you guys know this guy, Ignaz? The reason that we wash our hands is not because of Ignaz. Ignaz was the guy that noticed that, hey, I've got a bunch of people here who are touching and working with dead bodies, and I've got a bunch of people over here who are delivering babies. And for some reason, when the people who are handling dead bodies deliver the babies, a lot of people die. This isn't a good thing. What if they wash their hands in between? And so kind of the folklore that, we like to tell within, science fields and communications is that, this guy, he pushed against the norm and the doctors didn't want to listen because doctors are respectable people and my hands are not dirty. How dare you insinuate such a thing, sir? And this guy was seen as mad. He was sent off to an insane asylum because he had the audacity to suggest that gentlemen doctors had dirty hands and people kept dying. And so science, should have listened, but didn't. That's how the story is told. But there's a lot more to the story. He talked obsessively about his discoveries. He failed to communicate effectively. He failed to gather data with sufficient scientific rigor or clearly publish his work. He became drunk and depressed, and he furiously put his critics on blast, publishing angry open letters calling them things like ignoramuses and irresponsible murderers. That's not how you change people's minds. Nobody listened to him. In fact, the tragic thing about it is that he made it hard for people to open up to his ideas. And it's not like society at the time was so close to these ideas because he was literally a contemporary of Louis Pasteur and Joseph Lister. The people who are known for doing experiments and finding out that, oh, hey, there's this stuff called bacteria. And, oh, hey, if we sanitize our instruments and sanitize the room, you got the father of modern surgery who Listerine is named after. These people were contemporaries of Ignaz Semmelweis. It's not like society was unreasonable and unable to listen to these ideas. It's that sometimes we get angry at others, like how dare they not listen? And there might be more effective ways to reach people. There might be. I'm not trying to tone police and say that everyone who gets upset is not justified in feeling that way. I absolutely understand the anger. I get it. But how are we going to channel it? Are we going to channel it intelligently? Are we going to take it like a combustion engine and that explosion, that fire in us we're going to use to really gain ground and make a difference? Or is it going to be like dynamite in our hands? Hanlon's razor, I think, is one of the best tools to live by on the internet. Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by ignorance. Assume that not everyone is privy to the same information that you are. Assume that people are trying to do their best because I guarantee you that most of us are the heroes of our own stories. Most of us don't see ourselves as the bad guy, and most of us don't actually want to cause harm, with some exceptions. And finally, err on the side of compassion. I don't want to be known for how many subscribers I get. I don't want to be known for how great of a video I did or for slam dunking on some apologist. I want to help people. And I want to be known for caring. And I think that all of us should. Because I think if we did that, I think we'd have a much healthier family. Thank you.
Thank you.
I read David Silverman's Fighting God, and that's kind of what did my atheism for me. His big push, which completely contradicts your entire speech, is that there are the firebrands like he is, and they're the more compassionate and kind of the good cops, bad cops thing. Would you say that the quote unquote firebrand or the bad cop in the atheism community is probably too much?
What makes you think that I'm not a firebrand? I think that you can have passion and you can be a firebrand. I protested the NIFB. I went to their doorstep when they were saying that gay people deserve to be put to death, and we stood directly in front of them and stared them in the face and told them that they were wrong and held signs and got press coverage. But we did it tactfully. And we won the narrative. And we ran that shit like a military operation. I don't think that you don't have to be firebrands. I think that you can be passionate without being a dick. And that, and even if you're, and I think that there are effective and less effective ways of reaching people, and that the stuff that I'm talking about here, it's not just towards the Christians. This is stuff that's happening within our community where we're eating our own alive. And I'm tired of it. because I didn't come into a community that I call family to sit here and gray rock you guys. See, I'm getting worked up and heated, but it's not at you. And I appreciate the question. It's a good question.
And now, Jesus will speak.
I see a light.
You already know what it looks like. It's okay. You can be angry and compassionate at the same time. So I'm so glad that you said that, because like you can have righteous anger where it's like, is women's rights up for vote? Is my gay rights up for vote? Do you think
Absolutely
I should
not.
die?
Yeah.
I'm going to be angry about that kind of shit.
Yeah.
Like that's rude
And understandably
disgusting. So yeah, I'm gonna speak out about it. And people are like, "Oh, I thought you were just like a nice Christian boy playing Jesus." I'm like, "No, I want to burn down the patriarchy."
And I absolutely don't think we need to take anything lying down if, just to be nice. Were you done with your question? I'm sorry.
I got the mic.
Okay.
Great talk, by the way.
Thank you.
My question is, when you see some of this particular behavior, specifically from people within the atheist community, where it's a lot of finger pointing and blaming and things of that nature, to the point where we're not really getting anywhere and we're kind of like canceling each other out, is there a graceful way for those who happen to observe that particular behavior and turn it around for something that could be considered good?
You're saying to see the abusive behavior and change it into something good.
Yes.
The tricky thing with abusive relationships is no one can change the abuser but the abuser. And so if you're in a circle where you're surrounded by people that are interacting like that, you can call it out and they might absolutely crucify you. Or you can find other people and slowly build a healthier community. And I think that because the atheist community is still so small, we're starting to see that happen, where we'll see these big groups pop up, and then there's certain clashes of personalities, and they kind of all bubble off and splinter off. I don't expect everyone to get along. I don't expect everyone's personalities to match, but I think that as a whole, I do think that we can speak out more on this stuff and draw attention to it and point out some of the names for these things that, like, hey, it looks like you're kind of gaslighting people, or your purity test might be a little too difficult to pass. I've seen a number of situations where someone felt like they shouldn't be talking about anything at all because they were like, it was someone who had a platform and they were a trans ally and they were talking about issues, LGBT issues, in a positive, healthy, good way. But they had been demonized for, well, you shouldn't be, even have a platform because, you're not trans, so you should just give it to someone who does. YouTube's not a zero-sum game. You can have people on a show that you've already built. You can elevate up voices, and you can also encourage them and teach them how to start their own and empower them. Like, it's not, the sad thing with that was eventually she wound up canceling herself, her own show. And it's like, you reach a point where you go so extreme in one direction that you're like, I don't pass my own purity test, so I just have to drop off the face of the earth. And I think that by seeing this stuff, especially seeing some of the early warning signs of it in certain communities, by calling attention to it in a healthy way, not in a, I'm just going to put you on blast publicly way, but maybe like you say something to others and say, I don't really think that what they're doing or saying is very healthy. I don't think it's a good way to go about these conversations. Or confront them personally, privately, like in a DM and in a compassionate way, and call it out. And if the person is willing to grow and learn and listen, they might at least hear it and maybe over time take it to heart. And if they feel just confronted and there's a seed of narcissism, they might completely just railroad over you. But I do think that these are things that we need to be calling out within our own community. I don't know if that was a great answer to your question, but I see a hand in the back.
This is Nick. People call me Nitty. I really like this talk, and kind of pairing it a little bit with Shannon's talk earlier. One of the things Christians like to say is that they do love, empathy, and compassion the best. Like, you're going to come to church in this community because we're the best at this. And when we eat our own here, and I'm someone that's very new to this, but if I'm watching a lot of infighting or disagreement that seems toxic or difficult and people just being shunned out, well, how is that any different than all the people who left me behind when I no longer was Christian? And that's hard to just watch. But the other thing that I wanted to say was, in this community and being new to it, it's not just that people let go of some nebulous God belief. There's all kinds of other things that they're doing in their lives as they're deconstructing, traditions that they're holding to, relationships that they're in, people that they need to associate with, that they're not just going to stop associating with because they lost their God belief. And we have to be careful because we could really hurt people more as they're coming out of their faith by being unconscious of that kind of stuff. That this is a person in a long process of change who needs to heal a lot of things that they might be completely mistaken on or even still bigoted about. So yeah, I really appreciate what you had to say today.
Thank you. On that note, because there's a point that you said that I think is really, really crucial to realize, and that's that even in groups like this, you have people at all steps along the journey. I promise you that my first 6 months as an atheist, I may have come to something like this, but I didn't believe anywhere near the same stuff I believe now. Because you don't wake up one day and all of a sudden you're like, well, I'm an atheist today. And so all of a sudden, all the last however many decades worth of stuff that I believed, I'm just going to like leave that. No, that's why you call it deconstruction, because there's a long process of figuring out, okay, now that I don't believe in God, how do I feel about abortion? How do I feel about LGBT stuff? How do I feel about creationism? Where'd we come from? Like, what about ghosts? What about spirits? Yeah, there's so many little things that like you still are working through now that a huge fundamental part of your identity and a core belief has radically changed, and you're trying to rebuild. And if all of a sudden you rush into this community and you're still trying on beliefs like you try on clothes at a Kmart, do Kmart still exist?
No.
Okay, like you don't try on clothes at a Kmart. If you're swapping these belief systems in and out, trying to like see like, does that fit? No, that one's not great. That one, okay. And then you step out into light and you're like, what about this idea that I have? And everyone's just like, bam, nuke them. Then all of a sudden, like you were done before you ever got started. It was a welcoming, warm welcome you got. So I think that that's important to realize, is that like, there's people at all steps along the process, and like, we don't know if our initial gut reactions, we're assuming that maybe they've had more time to figure this stuff out than they actually have. But yeah, I think that's all the questions. Am I good? Do I get walk-off music?
Thank you, John. Holy Koolaid, everybody!
Before you go, I'm curious, was your high school education kind of crap like mine was? And did you enjoy this talk, and do you want to hang out in Nashville, Tennessee with me at the end of this month? Because I'm going to be at a conference called NaNoCon, giving a talk on everything that you should have learned in science class but didn't, and the whole conference is going to be buckets of fun. So if you want to come hang out, the tickets for this event are super affordable, and I'll put a link below so that you can grab yours before they sell out. Lastly, if you appreciate this talk and you value what I'm doing, you can support my work with a per video pledge on patreon.com/holykoolaid or with a one-time donation on Venmo or PayPal. Thank you so much for your ongoing support, and as always, dare to be curious, but don't drink the Kool-Aid.